The summons. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, burning through every communication channel humanity possessed. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Commander Isla Vance stood in the observation deck of the United Earth Embassy station, staring at the translated text that had turned her world upside down. Behind her, Dr. Marcus Webb adjusted his glasses for the 100th time, a nervous habit she'd learned to recognize over their 3 years working together. "They're calling us to the Convergence Council," Marcus said quietly. "No human delegation has ever been invited to their inner chamber." "Invited isn't the word I'd use," Isla replied, her jaw tight. "This reads more like a trial summons." The Convergence Council ruled over 200 civilizations spanning 47 star systems. They were ancient, powerful, and utterly convinced of their superiority. Humanity had been granted observer status 5 years ago, a courtesy extended to developing species, who showed promise but lacked the maturity for true membership. Now, that status was about to be tested. The third member of their delegation entered through the sliding doors. Kaido Reeves moved with the controlled grace of someone who'd spent years in variable gravity. As Earth's chief cultural liaison, he understood the unspoken rules of galactic diplomacy better than anyone. "I've been reviewing the charges," Kaido said, pulling up a holographic display. "They're accusing humanity of 7 violations of the Harmony Protocols. Unauthorized expansion, aggressive resource extraction, and..." He paused. "Excessive individualism." "Excessive individualism?" Isla's eyebrows shot up. "That's not even a real crime." "To them it is," Kaido replied grimly. "The council species are collective-minded. They make decisions through consensus that can take decades. We make decisions in boardrooms and voting booths. They think we're dangerous." Marcus cleared his throat. "There's something else. I've been analyzing the timing. 3 council species have filed complaints against us in the last month. All of them cite our unpredictable nature as a threat to galactic stability." Isla turned back to the viewport, watching Earth rotate slowly below. The blue marble that had birthed them, that had survived ice ages and asteroid strikes, that had produced billions of people who argued and dreamed and built impossible things. "When do we leave?" she asked. "The transport arrives in 6 hours, Kaido said. "The hearing is set for 3 days from now on Sanctum Prime, the Council's home world. 3 days to prepare a defense for our entire species." Isla laughed without humor. "No pressure." Marcus stepped beside her, following her gaze to Earth. "Do you think we can convince them?" "I don't know," Isla admitted. "But I know we have to try. Because if we fail, they won't just deny us membership. They'll quarantine Earth. No trade, no technology exchange, no contact with the galaxy beyond our solar system. We'll be alone." "We've been alone before," Kaido said softly. "Humanity survived." "Survived, yes," Isla agreed. "But I want more than survival for us. I want the stars." The transport ship that arrived was a Zephyrian vessel, all smooth curves and crystalline structures that seemed to defy physics. Its captain, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish made of light, greeted them with formal indifference. As they departed Earth's orbit, Isla watched her home world shrink in the viewport. Somewhere down there, 8 billion people were going about their lives, unaware that 3 of their own were about to stand trial for humanity's right to reach for the cosmos. The journey to Sanctum Prime would take 2 days through slipspace corridors. 2 days to prepare arguments, to rehearse presentations, to steel themselves for what was coming. But as Isla settled into her quarters and pulled up files on the council members they'd face, one thought kept echoing in her mind. They weren't just defending humanity's actions. They were defending humanity's nature itself. The very thing that made them human, the chaos, the passion, the refusal to accept limits, was exactly what the council feared most. And perhaps, Isla thought with a grim smile, that was exactly what they needed to prove. That some things were worth fighting for. That what could matter more than consensus. That the fire in human hearts could burn brighter than all the cold, distant stars. The real battle hadn't begun yet. But Isla Vance was ready for war. The council chamber. Sanctum Prime defied description. As the transport descended through layers of atmospheric processors, Isla pressed her face to the viewport like a child seeing their first sunset. The planet below wasn't just inhabited, it was engineered. Continents formed perfect geometric patterns. Oceans glowed with bioluminescent cities that pulsed in synchronized rhythm. The entire world breathed as one organism. "It's beautiful," Marcus whispered beside her. "It's terrifying," Kaido corrected. "This is what they want from us. Perfect order. Perfect harmony. No dissent, no chaos, no individual dreams disrupting the collective vision. Isla understood what he meant. There was something deeply unsettling about such perfection. No weather patterns, no wild spaces, no unpredictability. Sanctum Prime was a masterpiece of control. Everything Earth was not. Their escort, a Valkyrie diplomat named Thessar, guided them through the arrival terminal. The Valkyrie were tall, crystalline beings who communicated through musical tones. Thessar's song was courteous but cold, the galactic equivalent of a bureaucrat processing paperwork. The hearing convenes at dawn cycle, Thessar chimed. You will be provided accommodation in the observer wing. You are advised to prepare your statements with care. The council does not appreciate disorder. We've noticed, Isla said dryly. The observer wing was comfortable but sterile, like a luxury hotel designed by someone who'd read about human needs but never actually met one. The beds were too firm, the temperature slightly too cool, the lighting that peculiar shade that made everything feel like a hospital waiting room. They spent the night reviewing their strategy. Marcus had compiled psychological profiles on each council member. Kaido had prepared cultural context for every argument they'd make. Isla had memorized defense protocols and precedent cases going back 3 centuries of council history. But as dawn approached and sleep eluded her, Isla found herself thinking about home. She thought about her daughter, Elena, who wanted to be an astrophysicist. About her brother who ran a restaurant in Lagos where recipes changed daily based on whatever ingredients looked good that morning. About strangers arguing politics in coffee shops, artists creating works that challenged everything, scientists pursuing theories everyone said were impossible. The messy, complicated, beautiful chaos of humanity. Dawn on Sanctum Prime was artificial, a gradual brightening controlled by atmospheric processors. Thessar arrived precisely on schedule to escort them to the council chamber. The chamber itself took Isla's breath away. It was a vast sphere suspended in the center of a hollow mountain. No floor, no walls in the traditional sense, just a curved surface where reality seemed negotiable. Gravity adjusted depending on where you stood. The council members occupied stations around the sphere's interior, each positioned according to their species' environmental needs. There were the Arctelians, gaseous beings who existed in containment fields of swirling colors. The Zephyrians, those jellyfish-like creatures of pure light. The massive Crowthorn, resembling 6-legged bears carved from living stone. The Valkyrie with their crystalline bodies. And dozens of others, each representing civilizations that had endured for millennia. At the sphere's apex floated High Arbiter Velzanus, an ancient Valkyrie whose crystal body contained fractures that glowed with inner light, marks of wisdom and age. When she spoke, her musical tones were translated into every language simultaneously. We convened to address the matter of species designation, humanity, origin, soul system, status, observer pending review. Her tones were measured, judicial. The charges are severe. 7 violations of the Harmony Protocols. The council will hear evidence and render judgment. Isla, Marcus, and Kaido stood on a platform that had materialized in the chamber's center. Every council member's attention focused on them like spotlights. The first accuser was a Zephyrian named Luminar, his light form pulsing with what Isla recognized as agitation. Humanity expands without consensus. In the past decade, they have established 17 colonies across 4 systems. They did not seek approval. They did not consult neighboring species. They simply took what they wanted. Marcus stepped forward, his voice calm and clear. We followed all established protocols for expansion into unclaimed space. Every colony was placed in systems without sentient inhabitants or existing territorial claims. We notified the council of each settlement as required. You notify but you do not ask permission, an Arctelian named Prismatus interjected, her gaseous form swirling with agitated colors. You act first, inform later. This is the behavior of children who have not learned patience. Or the behavior of adults who understand opportunity, Kaido countered. With respect, the council's approval process for new colonies takes an average of 47 years. We established our first off-world settlement only 60 years ago. By council standards, we should still be seeking permission to leave our own solar system. A rumble of disapproval echoed through the chamber. The Crowthorn representative, Thorgrim, spoke in a voice like grinding stones. You prove the charges. Humanity is too hasty, too impulsive, too driven by individual desires rather than collective wisdom. You threaten the stability we have maintained for 10,000 years. Isla felt her temper rising but forced it down. Getting angry would only prove their point. Instead, she spoke with carefully controlled passion. 10,000 years of stability. That's impressive. She looked around the chamber, meeting as many gazes as species physiology allowed. But in those 10,000 years, how much have you grown? How many new technologies have you developed? How many new ideas have challenged your assumptions? Silence. The kind that felt dangerous. Humanity is only a few centuries into our technological age, Isla continued. And yes, we move fast. Yes, we're impatient. Yes, we make mistakes. But we also learn quickly, adapt faster, and achieve things you said were impossible. You call it instability. We call it progress. High Arbiter Velzanis's tones carried a warning note. Progress without wisdom is merely chaos, Commander Vance. The galaxy has witnessed species like yours before. Species that burned bright and fast, that expanded recklessly, that valued individual ambition over collective harmony. Do you know what happened to them? The question hung in the air like a blade. They destroyed themselves, Velzanis answered her own question. Every single one. And sometimes they took others with them. The harmony protocols exist because we learned a terrible lesson. Chaos is a disease that must be contained. Marcus's analytical mind went into overdrive. You're afraid of us. Every being in the chamber stilled. Saying such a thing to the Convergence Council was diplomatic suicide. But Marcus pressed on. You've built a system based on predictability, on slow, careful consensus, on never taking risks. And now humanity arrives and we don't fit your model. We can't fit your model. So rather than adapt your thinking, you want to quarantine us. To contain the chaos. Yes, Velzanis said simply. Because your chaos threatens everything we have built. Kaito stepped forward, his voice carrying an edge of steel Isla had never heard before. Then perhaps what you've built isn't as stable as you think. Perhaps it's a cage you've convinced yourselves is paradise. Perhaps you've forgotten what it means to truly live rather than merely exist. The chamber erupted. Not in sound. Most of these species didn't communicate vocally, but in a wave of energy that set Isla's teeth on edge. Lights flashed, colors swirled, the very air seemed to vibrate with offense. Isla stood between her companions and the council's fury, and she felt something click into place. A clarity she hadn't possessed before. They couldn't win this fight with logic or precedent. The council didn't want to be convinced. They wanted humanity to submit, to slow down, to become like them. But humanity had never been good at submission. If you're going to judge us, Isla said, her voice cutting through the chaos, then judge us fairly. Don't just list our violations. Understand why we are the way we are. Give us the chance to show you what human will can achieve. High Arbiter Velzanis's glow dimmed, then brightened. You wish to present a defense? I wish to present the truth, Isla replied. About who we are, where we came from, and why our fire burns so bright it frightens you. The chamber fell silent again. Velzanis consulted with nearby council members through methods Isla couldn't perceive. Finally the High Arbiter spoke. Very well. You have one cycle to present your case. But know this, the council has already witnessed your actions. Your words must be extraordinary to overcome what your deeds have already shown us. As they were escorted from the chamber, Marcus leaned close to Isla. One cycle means about 26 hours. How are we supposed to defend all of humanity in 26 hours? Isla smiled grimly. We tell them a story. The one story every human knows. The story of how we survive. The burden of Earth. They worked through the night, though night on Sanctum Prime was just another program dimming of artificial light. Isla paced the sterile conference room while Marcus and Kaito assembled data, images, and historical records. We need to make them understand context, Marcus said, pulling up a holographic display of Earth's timeline. They see our expansion as aggression, but they don't understand what drove it. Start earlier, Isla suggested. Before space travel. Before technology. Show them Earth itself. Kaito manipulated the controls, bringing up geological data. Earth is a death world by galactic standards. I checked the Council's classification system. Our planet scores in the top 15% for environmental hostility. Perfect, Isla said. That's where we begin. When Dawn arrived and Thessar came to collect them, they were ready. Exhausted, running on coffee and nervous energy, but ready. The council chamber felt different this time. Perhaps it was knowing what awaited them, or perhaps the council itself had changed the atmosphere. Literally, Isla suspected, given their control over the environment. High Arbiter Velzanis signaled the session's beginning. The human delegation has requested to present context for their species' behavior. The council will hear your testimony. You may proceed. Isla nodded to Kaito, who activated their presentation. A massive holographic Earth materialized in the chamber's center, rotating slowly. But this wasn't the blue marble of today. This was Earth 4.5 billion years ago, a hell of volcanic fury and molten rock. "This is our beginning," Isla said, her voice carrying through translation to every species present. Earth was born in violence. For the first billion years of its existence, our planet was a furnace where nothing could live. The image shifted, showing the young Earth being bombarded by asteroids. Then came the late heavy bombardment. For millions of years, massive rocks from space crashed into our world. Each impact was an extinction event waiting to happen. An Arctelian named Veridex pulsed with curiosity. How did life emerge from such chaos? Marcus took over. "That's the thing about chaos, it creates opportunities. In the chemical soup of our early oceans, struck by lightning and radiation, molecules combined in random ways. Most combinations failed. But one succeeded. One small chain of proteins learned to replicate itself. Life didn't conquer Earth's chaos. Life was born from it. The hologram evolved, showing single-celled organisms, then more complex life. Then came the first mass extinction. The Great Oxygenation Event," Marcus continued. "Early bacteria learned to photosynthesize, producing oxygen as waste. Seems harmless, right? Except oxygen was toxic to most life on Earth at the time. 99% of species went extinct. The survivors adapted. Life learned to breathe poison and turn it into strength." The Crowthorne representative, Thorgrim, rumbled thoughtfully. "Your world has known extinction before." 5 major mass extinctions, Isla confirmed. The hologram showed each one: the Ordovician, the Devonian, the Permian, the Triassic, and finally, the Cretaceous. The last one you might recognize. An asteroid 10 kilometers wide struck Earth 66 million years ago. The impact had the force of 1 billion nuclear weapons. It vaporized rock, sent tsunamis racing around the globe, and threw so much debris into the atmosphere that the sun was blocked for years. 3/4 of all species died, including the dominant life forms of that era, the dinosaurs. The chamber was silent. Even species that had known war had rarely known such comprehensive disaster. "But life survived," Marcus said quietly. "Small mammals living underground. Birds descended from dinosaurs. Marine life in the deep ocean trenches. They endured in the dark, in the cold, in conditions that should have killed everything. And when the dust settled, they emerged into a changed world and adapted." Kaito shifted the display to show early humans. Fast forward to 200,000 years ago. Anatomically modern humans appear in Africa. By your standards, we're children, barely a heartbeat in galactic time. But even in that short existence, we've faced horrors you can't imagine. The hologram showed ice sheets covering half the planet. The ice ages came in cycles. Imagine waking one morning to find your world freezing. Imagine watching glaciers kilometers tall grind across continents, destroying everything in their path. Most species would go extinct. Humans? Kaito smiled without humor. We learned to make fire. We learned to sew clothing from animal hides. We learned to hunt mammoth and store food and tell stories around flames to keep our spirits alive through the endless winter. Then there were the volcanic eruptions, Marcus added. Mount Toba 74,000 years ago. It nearly ended us. The eruption was so massive it caused a volcanic winter that lasted a decade. Global temperatures dropped by 15 degrees. Forests died. Animals died. The human population crashed to perhaps 10,000 individuals. 10,000 people left alive in the entire world. An Arctelian representative named Solmira swirled with something that might have been sympathy. How did you survive? We don't know, Isla admitted. There's no written record from that time. But we know we did. Those 10,000 people, scattered and starving, somehow held on. They passed down knowledge. They protected their children. They refused to surrender to the volcano's winter. And when spring finally came, they rebuilt. The hologram advanced through time, showing human civilization emerge. We built cities, Kaito said. Then plagues came. The Black Death killed half of Europe. Smallpox devastated populations when we connected continents. But we learned medicine. We learned quarantine. We turned our greatest killer, disease, into one of our greatest victories. We eradicated smallpox entirely. Then we turned that knowledge against ourselves, Isla said grimly. The hologram showed the world wars, nuclear weapons, the Cold War standoff. We created weapons that could end our species in an afternoon. We came within minutes of using them. And somehow we chose not to. Somehow we stepped back from the brink. Thorgrim spoke, his stone-like voice thoughtful. You paint a picture of a species forged in catastrophe. Because that's what we are, Isla said, meeting his gaze. Every generation of humans has faced existential threats. Ice ages, volcanic winters, plague, or famine. Extinction events that should have ended us. But we're still here. We're still fighting. We're still dreaming of tomorrow. Marcus pulled up data comparing Earth to other Council worlds. Look at your home planets. Stable climates. Predictable seasons. Rare catastrophes. You evolved in paradise gardens compared to Earth. You learned consensus because you had time for it. You learned patience because your worlds allowed it. We learned something different, Isla said. We learned that tomorrow is not guaranteed. We learned that if you want to survive, you must act now. You must take risks. You must be willing to fail because the alternative is extinction. High Arbiter Velzanis's tones carried a challenge. So you justify your recklessness as survival instinct? No, Isla replied. I'm explaining our nature. You see humans expanding too fast, taking risks you wouldn't take, refusing to wait for your consensus. You're right, we are all those things. But you need to understand why. We carry the weight of Earth in our bones. We remember, at a level deeper than conscious thought, what it means to nearly go extinct. So yes, we move fast. Because we learned that slow species die. Kaido activated another display showing human achievements. But it's not just about survival. Look what we built despite Earth's hostility. Art and music and literature. Philosophy and science and mathematics. We sent probes to the edge of our solar system powered by math we invented. We decoded our own DNA. We stood on our moon and looked back at Earth and saw it as one small, fragile world worth protecting. We argue constantly, Marcus added. We disagree on everything. We have thousands of languages, hundreds of cultures, countless philosophies about how to live. You see that as chaos. We see it as richness, as possibility, as the creative friction that drives innovation. The holographic Earth rotated between them, their blue home world scarred by ice ages and asteroid strikes, their death world that somehow birthed dreamers. Prismatus, the Arctelian, swirled with contemplative colors. You speak of survival. But survival alone does not explain your expansion into the stars. What drives you beyond your own world? Isla smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she'd shown since entering the council chamber. Hope, she said simply. Hope that there's more out there. Hope that we can be more than we are. Hope that among the stars, we might find purpose beyond just surviving. She turned to address the entire council, her voice carrying passion that no translation could diminish. You asked why we're here. Why we don't wait for your permission. Why we refuse to slow down. It's because Earth taught us a fundamental truth, adapt or die. And we choose to adapt by reaching for the impossible. Your protocols ask us to wait decades for approval, Kaido said. But what if in those decades something happens to Earth? What if we need those colony worlds to save our species? We can't risk putting all our hopes in one world, not when that world has tried to kill us 1,000 times before. Marcus gestured to the timeline. You've had stability for 10 millennia. We've had stability for maybe 50 years if we're generous. Your caution comes from success. Our urgency comes from trauma. Neither is wrong. They're just different. High Arbiter Velzanis was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her tones were complex, layered with meanings Isla struggled to interpret. You have given context, Velzanis said. We understand your past shaped your present. But the question remains, does your past justify your future? Does trauma excuse recklessness? Does history grant permission to threaten galactic harmony? Isla felt the trap closing. They'd explained humanity's nature, but explanation wasn't justification in the council's eyes. You're asking the wrong question, Isla said, and she heard Kaido's sharp intake of breath at her boldness. You shouldn't ask if our past justifies our actions. You should ask if the galaxy can afford to reject what we offer. The chamber rippled with surprise. Several council members began speaking at once, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of confusion. Velzanis's tone cut through the noise like a blade. Bold words, Commander. Elaborate. Isla took a breath. This was it. The moment that would determine humanity's fate. You've spent 10,000 years maintaining stability, avoiding risks, building a system that prizes caution above all else. And you've succeeded. This chamber stands as proof of that success. But success has made you stagnant. How dare, Thorgrim began, but Velzanis silenced him with a gesture. Continue, the High Arbiter said, and Isla couldn't tell if she was curious or furious. When was the last time a council species made a fundamental breakthrough in technology? Isla asked. Not an incremental improvement, but a real leap forward? When was the last time someone proposed an idea that challenged everything you thought you knew? Marcus pulled up data. I researched council achievements for the past 2,000 years. You've made impressive refinements to existing technology. Your efficiency has improved remarkably. But the fundamental discoveries, slipspace travel, quantum communication, biomechanical integration, all of those are ancient. Millennia old. You're maintaining a legacy, not building a future. Kaido added his voice. Humanity has been in space for barely a century. In that time, we've developed 17 unique propulsion systems, discovered 11 new materials, and proposed 43 theories about faster-than-light travel. Most of them failed. But 3 showed promise. 3 ideas that just might, revolutionize space travel. You need us, Isla said, and the words fell like stones in the silent chamber. Not because we're strong or advanced or wise, but because we're different. Because we ask questions you stopped asking. Because we take risks you won't take. Because sometimes stability needs to be disrupted to avoid stagnation. You claim the galaxy needs your chaos? Velzanis asked, and her tone was unreadable. I claim the galaxy needs balance, Isla replied. You have wisdom. We have will. You have patience. We have urgency. You have tradition. We have innovation. Together, we could be greater than either could be alone. Or you could destroy everything we've built, Prismatus countered. Your passion is impressive, Commander, but passion without control is merely destruction. Then teach us control, Isla shot back. Work with us. Share your wisdom. But don't cage us. Don't demand we become you. Because if you do, you lose what makes us valuable, our different perspective, our alternative approach, our willingness to try what you won't. The council members conferred among themselves through methods humans couldn't perceive. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, High Arbiter Velzanis spoke. You have given us much to consider. But words are easy, Commander Vance. Anyone can claim value. Anyone can promise cooperation. You have explained your past and described your potential. Now you must prove your worth. Isla felt ice form in her stomach. What do you propose? Velzanis's tones carried finality. A trial. Not of judgment but of demonstration. Show us that human will can achieve what our wisdom cannot. Show us that your fire burns with purpose, not just heat. Show us you are more than clever survivors. Show us you are worthy partners in shaping the galaxy's future. What kind of trial? Marcus asked carefully. That, Velzanis said, will be revealed tomorrow. Prepare yourselves, humans. You asked to prove your worth. Now you'll have your chance. As they were escorted from the chamber, Isla felt the weight of 8 billion lives pressing down on her shoulders. They'd bought themselves time. But time for what? What could 3 humans possibly do to prove an entire species' worth? Back in their quarters, Kaido finally spoke the question they were all thinking. What if we can't do it? What if whatever they ask is impossible? Isla looked at her companions, Marcus with his brilliant analytical mind, Kaido with his deep understanding of cultures, and herself with nothing but stubborn determination and a refusal to quit. Then we'll fail spectacularly, she said. But we'll fail trying. Because that's what humans do. We face the impossible and refuse to blink. Marcus nodded slowly. Earth didn't survive 5 mass extinctions by giving up. Exactly, Isla agreed. Whatever they throw at us tomorrow, we'll face it the way humans always have, with everything we've got. Outside their window, Sanctum Prime's artificial stars began their programmed ascent. Perfect. Predictable. Safe. And somewhere out in the real darkness between those stars, somewhere beyond the Council's control, the universe waited with all its beautiful, terrible chaos. Humanity was born from that chaos. Tomorrow they'd have to prove they could master it. The proving. Dawn brought Thessar and a message that made Isla's blood run cold. The Council has chosen your trial, the Velcari diplomat chimed. You are to report to Docking Bay 17 immediately. You will be briefed en route to your destination. Our destination? Marcus asked. Where are we going? Thessar's crystalline body flickered, a Velcari shrug. That is not my information to provide. The docking bay housed a sleek vessel that looked more like a weapon than a transport. An angular craft of black metal and pulsing energy conduits, it radiated barely contained power. Waiting beside it stood a figure Isla hadn't expected to see, Thorgrim, the massive Crowthorn Council member. His stone-like body seemed out of place on the pristine docking platform. Commander Vance, he rumbled. Dr. Webb. Liaison Reeves. I will accompany you on this trial. Why? Kaido asked bluntly. Because the council must have a witness. Someone to verify what transpires. I volunteered. Thorgrim's voice carried something that might have been respect. Your words yesterday were interesting. I wish to see if your actions matched them. They boarded the vessel, which turned out to be a convergence rapid response ship, the kind usually reserved for emergencies. The fact that they were using it sent a clear message about the trial's urgency. Once they were underway, Thorgrim activated a holographic display. What appeared made Isla's stomach drop. It was a planet but wrong. Its atmosphere swirled with toxic clouds. Its surface was a patchwork of dead zones and struggling ecosystems. Massive artificial structures dotted the landscape, but many were clearly failing. This is Kepler 442b, Thorgrim said. The humans among you may know it by that designation. It is one of the closest potentially habitable worlds to your Sol system. I know this planet, Marcus said, leaning forward. We detected it decades ago. Our probes suggested it had the right conditions for colonization. Had, Thorgrim emphasized. Past tense. 200 years ago, a species called the Varini established a colony there. They were similar to you. Young, ambitious, eager to expand. They saw potential and seized it without seeking council approval. Isla felt the trap closing. What happened to them? See for yourself. Thorgrim expanded the image, showing cities in various states of collapse. Forests stripped bare. Oceans choked with industrial waste. The Varini exploited Kepler 442b's resources without understanding its ecosystem. They terraformed without proper study. They built without consideration for long-term sustainability. Within 100 years, they had turned a garden world into a dying husk. Where are the Varini now? Kaido asked quietly. Gone. Extinct. Thorgrim's tone carried weight. Their colony collapsed. Disease, famine, and civil war killed most. The survivors fled into space, but without a homeworld, without resources, they scattered and faded. The last confirmed Varini died 43 years ago. The hologram zoomed in on a particular structure, a massive biodome, cracked and dark. However, they left something behind. In their final years, the Varini created a genetic archive. Seeds from their homeworld. DNA samples. Cultural records. Everything needed to perhaps someday resurrect their species. You want us to retrieve it? Isla said. No, Thorgrim corrected. We want you to save it. The biodome systems are failing. In approximately 48 hours, catastrophic failure will occur. The archive will be destroyed. The Varini will be truly, finally extinct, not just as living beings but as any possibility of ever existing again. Marcus was already analyzing the data. Why not send a council retrieval team? You have the resources. We tried, Thorgrim admitted. 3 times. The planet's environmental collapse has made it extremely hazardous. Toxic atmosphere, unstable geological activity, unpredictable weather patterns. Our teams couldn't adapt to the chaos quickly enough. The conditions remind council members too much of the very destruction we fear. So you're sending humans? Kaido said bitterly. Because we're used to death worlds. We're giving you an opportunity, Thorgrim replied. You claim your harsh origins make you valuable. You claim your adaptability is an asset. Prove it. Retrieve the Varini archive. Save what remains of a species you never met. Show us that human will can triumph where council wisdom faltered. Isla studied the planet's data, her mind racing through scenarios. What are the specific hazards? Atmospheric composition is 73% toxic, Thorgrim listed. Sulfur dioxide, methane, carbon monoxide. Breathable only with advanced filtration. Surface temperature swings between -20 and +50 Celsius within hours. Seismic activity is constant. Magnitude 4 tremors every few hours, larger quakes unpredictable. And there are storms. What kind of storms? Marcus asked. Thorgrim pulled up meteorological data. Electrical superstorms that last for days. Wind speeds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. Lightning strikes measuring millions of volts. The Varini called them the Screaming Dark. They would appear without warning and destroy everything in their path. You're sending 3 people into that? Isla said. This isn't a trial. It's a suicide mission. No, Thorgrim said, and his stone-like features somehow conveyed sincerity. It is a challenge. We will provide equipment, supplies, and emergency extraction if your lives are truly endangered. But the archive must be retrieved by your efforts, not council intervention. That is the point. Isla looked at Marcus and Kaido. Both were pale but determined. How long do we have? She asked. We reach Kepler 442b in 6 hours, Thorgrim said. You'll have 42 hours from landing to retrieval and extraction. After that, the biodome collapses regardless. And if we succeed? Kaido asked. Thorgrim's rumble might have been a laugh. Then you prove your point. Then perhaps the council reconsiders what it means to be worthy of the stars. The rest of the journey was spent in preparation. The ship's fabricators produced environmental suits designed for Kepler 442b's hostile conditions. Marcus studied geological surveys, plotting the safest route to the biodome. Kaido reviewed Varini cultural records, looking for insights into their archive's construction. Isla did what she always did before impossible missions. She wrote a message to her daughter. Elena, she recorded quietly in her quarters. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it back. I need you to know something. I need you to understand why I did what I did. Humans have always been explorers. Always been the ones who looked at the horizon and wondered what lay beyond. That curiosity, that drive, it's in our DNA. It's what makes us human. The galaxy is full of species smarter than us, stronger than us, older than us. But none of them have what we have, the absolute refusal to accept limitations. The stubborn insistence that impossible just means, not yet figured out. I'm about to go down to a dying world to save the last remnants of a species that destroyed itself. And I'm doing it not because it's easy or safe or logical. I'm doing it because it's right. Because someone should remember the Varini. Because every species deserves a second chance, even if it's just in memory. That's what I want you to remember about humanity, Elena. We're not always the smartest or the strongest. But we try. We fight for what's right even when it costs us. We reach for the stars even knowing we might fall. And if I do fall today, know that I fell reaching upward. Know that I loved you beyond measure. Know that every star you see in the sky is a destination, not a decoration. Keep reaching, baby girl. Keep dreaming. The universe is yours if you're brave enough to claim it. She ended the recording and found Marcus and Kaido in the common area, both lost in their own preparations. I have a plan, Marcus said without preamble. It's not a good plan. But it's the only one that might work. Tell us, Isla said. Marcus pulled up the biodome schematics. The main structure is compromised, but there's an auxiliary power system in the sublevels. If we can reach it and restore partial function, we might buy ourselves an extra 12 hours. That gives us more time to locate the archive and extract it safely. What's the catch? Kaido asked. The auxiliary system is 3 kilometers from the landing site. Through unstable terrain. In an atmosphere that will kill us if our suits breach. And we'll need to make that journey twice. Once to restore power, once to extract the archive. So it's impossible, Isla said. Impossible is just a human word for difficult, Marcus replied with a grim smile. Kaido looked at the planetary data again. There's something else. The Varini left automated defenses. They didn't want looters taking their archive. Those defenses might still be active. So we're walking into a dying world with toxic air, constant earthquakes, potential superstorms and active defense systems, Isla summarized. All to save the genetic legacy of a species that died before we reached the stars. Sounds like Tuesday, Marcus said. Despite everything, Isla laughed. That absurd human ability to find humor in darkness. Maybe that was their secret weapon. The ship's sensors chimed. Kepler 442b appeared in the view screen, a world of swirling toxic clouds and occasional glimpses of scarred surface. Thorgrim entered the common area, his massive form filling the doorway. We are preparing for descent. The landing site is within 1 kilometer of the biodome. Closer would risk the ship's systems in the unstable environment. 1 kilometer might as well be 100 in those conditions, Kaido said. Which is why council teams failed, Thorgrim agreed. They approached with caution. Waited for optimal conditions. Analyzed every risk. And while they waited, the window of opportunity closed. You're saying we need to move fast, Isla said. I'm saying you need to move like humans, Thorgrim replied. Recklessly. Instinctively. With that desperate urgency that terrifies the council. Because that urgency might be the only thing that saves the Varini archive. The descent through Kepler 442b's atmosphere was violent. The ship shuddered and bucked as toxic winds tore at its hull. Isla gripped her seat restraints and watched the altimeter count down. 3 kilometers. 2 kilometers. 1 kilometer. The landing was more controlled crash than arrival. The ship's hull groaned, systems flickering as Kepler 442b's hostile environment immediately began attacking their vessel. "Suit up," Isla ordered. "We have 42 hours. Let's not waste a second." The environmental suits were marvels of Council technology, self-repairing, temperature-regulating, with air filtration that could process even Kepler 442b's toxic mix. But they wouldn't last forever. Nothing lasted forever on this dying world. Isla was the first out of the airlock. Her boots hit the cracked earth of Kepler 442b, and she felt the planet's death throes through the soles. Constant vibration, the ground never still, as if the world itself was in pain. The sky was a roiling mass of yellow-green clouds. Lightning arced between storm fronts kilometers away. The air outside her suit registered as instantly lethal. "Welcome to paradise," Marcus muttered, stepping down beside her. Kaido checked his scanner. "The biodome is north-northwest, 942 meters. The auxiliary power station is." He paused. "Underground. Beneath the biodome. We'll need to find an access point." "Then let's move," Isla said. They began their trek across the dead world, 3 humans in high-tech suits picking their way through the ruins of alien ambition. Collapsed buildings rose like broken teeth. Forests stood as petrified skeletons. Everything spoke of failure and decay. But Isla looked at her companions and saw something different. Not failure. Not decay. But determination. This was the human way. Walking into hell because someone needed saving. Risking everything for beings they'd never met. Refusing to let even an extinct species fade completely from existence. A tremor shook the ground, strong enough to make them stumble. Marcus's scanner shrieked warnings. "Magnitude 5.3, he reported. "That's going to become more common as we get closer to the biodome. The structure's collapse is destabilizing the entire region." "How long?" Isla asked. Marcus checked the data. "Best case? We have maybe 38 hours now. Worst case? The next major quake could trigger a cascade failure." "Then we run," Isla decided. And run they did. 3 humans racing across a dying alien world, chasing the impossible because it was the right thing to do. Because that's what humans did. They reached the biodome's outer perimeter as the first electrical storm appeared on the horizon. The structure was massive, a dome half a kilometer across, its surface cracked like an eggshell ready to break. "Find the access point," Isla ordered. They split up, searching the perimeter. Kaido's voice came over the comm. "Found it. Northeast section. It's sealed, but I think I can override the lock." They converged on his position. The access hatch was covered in Varini script. Warnings about authorized personnel only, about the archive's sacred nature, about the hope that someday their children might return. Children that would never be born. Unless 3 humans could succeed where the mighty council had failed. Kaido worked on the lock while Isla and Marcus watched the approaching storm. It was beautiful in its fury, lightning that split the sky, thunder that seemed to shake the planet's core. "Got it?" Kaido said as the hatch hissed open. They descended into darkness, their suit lights cutting through air that hadn't moved in decades. The auxiliary power station lay ahead, and beyond that, the archive that could resurrect a dead species. 42 hours had become 37. The clock was ticking. But Isla felt a strange calm settle over her. This was what humanity did. This was what made them worthy. They walked into hell not because they were told to, but because it was right. And if they had to burn to save the Varini's last hope? Well, humans had always burned bright. Time to show the council what that fire could accomplish. Descent into darkness. The stairs down were Varini-sized, slightly wider and shorter than human standard, forcing the team into an awkward crouch as they descended. The walls were covered in script that Kaido's translator struggled to process. "Prayers," he said quietly. "These are prayers to their gods, asking for forgiveness for what they did to this world." "Did their gods answer?" Marcus asked. "I don't think so. The Varini had 300 different religious traditions. By the end, they'd abandoned all of them." Kaido traced a hand along the wall. "This last message, it roughly translates to, 'We failed our world, but perhaps we can save our memory.'" Isla felt the weight of that failure pressing down like the stone above them. How many species had looked at their dying worlds and felt this same despair? How close had humanity come to writing similar messages? The stairs terminated at a sealed blast door. Marcus ran his scanner over it. "This is serious security. Multi-layered, biometric locks, energy fields. The Varini really didn't want anyone getting to their archive." "Can you crack it?" Isla asked. "Not without power to the security systems. which means we need to get the auxiliary generator running first. Marcus pulled up his map. According to these schematics, it should be 2 levels down through maintenance corridors. The maintenance corridors were narrow tunnels lined with pipes and conduits. Emergency lighting flickered weakly, powered by backup systems that had somehow survived 2 centuries. The effect was unsettling, shadows that moved wrong, sounds that might have been structural stress or something else. Tell me you're getting weird readings too, Kaido said, checking his scanner. Define weird, Marcus replied. Thermal signatures. Small ones. Moving. Isla tensed. The defenses you mentioned? Maybe. Or maybe just automated maintenance drones that are still trying to do their jobs. They found out which a moment later when something small and mechanical scuttled across their path. It was roughly the size of a cat with multiple legs and a sensor array that tracked their movement. For a moment, everyone froze. Then the drone chirped, a sound that might have been curious rather than aggressive, and scuttled away into the darkness. Maintenance drone, Marcus said with relief. Probably harmless. Probably, Kaido echoed, not sounding convinced. They pressed deeper into the complex. The temperature was rising as they descended, the planet's internal heat bleeding through failing thermal regulation. Isla's suit compensated, but she could feel the edge of discomfort creeping in. The auxiliary generator room was exactly as depressing as expected. Massive equipment covered in 2 centuries of dust and decay. Control panels dark and dead. The whole room spoke of abandonment and futility. Okay, Marcus said, approaching the main console. The good news is the generator itself looks intact. The Varini built to last. The bad news is I need to manually restore power to about 40 different systems before the main reactor will come online. How long? Isla asked. Marcus pulled up diagnostic data. 4 hours. Maybe 5 if I run into complications. We don't have 5 hours, Kaido said. The storm outside is intensifying. My scanner's picking up electromagnetic interference that's off the charts. As if to emphasize his point, the building shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere in the distance, metal screamed against metal. Then I'll work fast, Marcus said, already pulling open access panels. Isla and Kaido stood guard while Marcus disappeared into the guts of the generator. The sounds he made, tools on metal, frustrated curses, occasional small explosions, would have been comical in any other situation. Can I ask you something? Kaido said quietly, his eyes scanning the shadows. Sure. Why do you think they chose this trial? The council could have asked us to do anything. Why send us here? Isla considered the question. Because they're testing more than our skills. They're testing our character. They want to see if we'll risk our lives for beings we never met. If we'll fight for a species that made the same mistakes they're afraid we'll make. You think we're like the Varini? I think the council sees similarities. Young species, rapid expansion, ambitious beyond our means. Isla looked around at the failing structure. But there's a difference. The Varini were alone. We have the council's wisdom available to us, if they'd share it instead of hiding behind their protocols. Another tremor shook the complex, stronger than before. Lights flickered. In the generator room, Marcus shouted something unrepeatable. Everything okay? Isla called. Define okay, Marcus shouted back. I'm trying to route power around 3 failed junctions using equipment that should be in a museum. But yeah, I'm fine. Kaido's scanner beeped urgently. Isla, we have movement. Multiple contacts. Coming from the upper levels. The defenses? I don't think so. These signatures are larger. Biological. Isla's hand moved to the plasma cutter on her belt, designed for cutting through debris, but it could serve as a weapon if needed. Show me. Kaido's scanner displayed the approaching signatures. 6 contacts, moving with purpose, descending through the levels above them. The movement pattern was coordinated, almost intelligent. What could have survived down here for 2 centuries? Kaido asked. Nothing good, Isla said. Marcus, how's that generator coming? Another 3 hours minimum. Why? Because we might have company. The contacts were close now. Isla could hear them. Footsteps, clicking sounds, something being dragged across metal floors. She positioned herself at the corridor entrance, Kaido beside her, both weapons drawn. What emerged from the darkness made Isla's breath catch. They were Varini. Or had been. Cybernetically modified, more machine than flesh now, these beings moved with jerky, unnatural motions. Their biological parts were preserved but barely alive, maintained by the machines that had replaced most of their organs. Eyes that were still organic stared out from metal skulls. Mouths opened in silent screams. Preservation protocols, Kaido whispered in horror. They tried to save themselves. They merged with machines to survive the environmental collapse. One of the cyborg Varini raised what might have been an arm or a weapon. Its voice emerged as electronic static layered over organic vocal cords, creating something inhuman. Unauthorized access. Archive must be protected. We're here to save your archive, Isla said, hoping her translator could make the cyborg Varini understand. We're trying to help. All must die, so the species may live, the cyborg responded. Its companions spread out, surrounding them. No looters, no thieves, only death and memory. They're not rational, Kaido said. The preservation protocols have degraded. They're just following their last orders, protect the archive at all costs. The cyborg Varini attacked. Isla's plasma cutter came up, slicing through the arm weapon of the closest attacker. Kaido fired his disruption pulse, shorting out another cyborg systems. But there were 6 of them and they didn't feel pain or fear. Marcus emerged from the generator room, took in the situation and dove back inside. Keep them away from the equipment. Easier said than done. The cyborg Varini fought with the desperate fury of beings defending their species' last hope. They didn't understand that the humans were trying to save that hope, not destroy it. Isla fought with everything she had, but guilt gnawed at her. These were the Varini survivors, or what passed for survivors. 2 centuries of existing in this hell, degraded and mad, serving a purpose that no longer made sense. Kaito, she shouted. Can you hack their systems? Shut them down without killing them? They're already dead, Isla, Kaido replied, barely dodging a clawed appendage. These are just automated systems running on dead flesh. But Isla refused to accept that. Try anyway. While Isla kept the cyborgs occupied, Kaido retreated to a terminal and started working. His fingers flew across controls, searching for access protocols, override codes, anything that might reach the degraded minds of these machine flesh horrors. Another earthquake hit, magnitude 6 at least. The ceiling cracked. Pipes burst, venting steam. One of the cyborg Varini fell as the floor buckled beneath it. Got something? Kaido shouted. The preservation protocols have an override. If I can convince their systems that the primary directive is fulfilled, they might power down. What's the primary directive? Isla asked, cutting through another cyborg's weapon. Preserve the archive until a Varini returns to claim it. Kaido looked up, his eyes wide. Isla, I have an idea. It's completely insane. I like insane. Tell me. The cyborgs are scanning for Varini DNA markers. If I can hack our suit's identification protocols, make them think one of us is Varini? Do it, Isla ordered. Kaido's hands blurred across the controls. The cyborg Varini were pressing closer, their attacks more coordinated. Isla's plasma cutter was overheating. They had seconds at most. Then Kaido's suit transponder began broadcasting a false signature. Varini DNA, Varini biopatterns, every marker that would identify him as one of their species' lost children. The cyborg Varini froze. One of them approached Kaido slowly, almost reverently. When it spoke, its voice was less static, more organic. Child, you returned, we preserved, we waited. Yes, Kaido said softly, his translator working overtime. I've returned. The archive, is it safe? Safe. Must remember us. The cyborg's organic eyes welled with tears, actual tears, preserved by machines for 200 years. We failed, the world, but not the memory, not the hope. I understand, Kaido said, and Isla heard real emotion in his voice. Your duty is complete. You preserved everything. You can rest now. Rest. The cyborg repeated as if remembering what that word meant. It turned to its companions. Duty fulfilled. Mission complete. We can rest. One by one the cyborg Varini powered down. Their machine components went dark. Their biological parts finally, mercifully died. They collapsed like puppets with cut strings, 200-year-old guardians finally released from their endless vigil. Kaido stood among the fallen, his suit still broadcasting its false signature, and for a moment he wept. They waited, he said. For 2 centuries they waited for someone to come home. And we had to lie to them to set them free. Isla put a hand on his shoulder. You gave them peace. Sometimes that's all we can do. From the generator room came a triumphant shout. Power's back. Auxiliary systems online. Lights blazed throughout the complex. Terminals flickered to life. The biodome systems, dormant for so long, began their startup sequences. But the victory felt hollow standing among the fallen guardians. Marcus emerged, saw the scene and went pale. What happened? They were protecting the archive, Isla said. Until the very end. Marcus checked his scanner. The power restoration bought us time but not much. The biodome's structural integrity is at 18%. We have maybe 20 hours before catastrophic collapse. Then we find that archive, Isla said. And we make sure their sacrifice meant something. With power restored, the security doors opened. The path to the Verini archive lay ahead, a short walk but an eternity in terms of what it represented. As they climbed back through the levels, Isla thought about the cyborg Verini. About beings who'd chosen to give up their humanity, their Verini tie, to serve a higher purpose. Who'd endured centuries of hell to protect something they'd never see used. That wasn't so different from what humans did, she realized. They sacrificed themselves for future generations. They preserved knowledge and culture even when their own worlds burned. They chose hope over despair even when hope seemed impossible. Maybe that's what made species worthy of the stars. Not their technology or their wisdom, but their willingness to sacrifice for those who came after. The archive room was a cathedral of preservation. Thousands of crystalline storage units containing genetic material, cultural records, art and music and literature. The Verini's entire civilization compressed into patterns of light and information. And at the center, a message in every language the Verini had known. To whoever finds this, we failed. But perhaps you won't. Take our knowledge. Learn from our mistakes. Remember us not for how we died but for how we tried to live. Isla read the message 3 times before she could speak. Let's get this home, she said finally. Every species deserves to be remembered. The storm's heart. Extracting the archive was supposed to be the easy part. The Verini had designed modular storage units that could be disconnected and transported. Marcus estimated 30 minutes to package everything for transport. He was wrong. The degradation is worse than I thought, Marcus reported, his hands deep in access panels. The containment fields are failing. If I just yank the storage units, we risk corrupting the genetic data. I need to transfer everything to our shielded containers first. How long? Isla asked the question she was getting tired of asking. 2 hours. Maybe 3. Kaido checked his scanner. We don't have 3 hours. The electrical storm outside is intensifying. My readings show electromagnetic buildup that's off the scale. When it hits, it's going to fry every electronic system in this complex. Including the archive, Marcus said grimly. And our suits, Isla added. Can we shield ourselves? Marcus shook his head. Not from a storm this intense. The Verini called them screaming dark for a reason. Lightning strikes powerful enough to vaporize rock. The electromagnetic pulse will penetrate anything short of military-grade hardened bunkers. So we're trapped, Kaido said. Even if we get the archive packaged, we can't get it back to the ship through that storm. Isla looked at the archive's crystalline storage units, each one containing thousands of genetic codes. The sum total of a species' biological legacy, waiting to be destroyed by the same planetary chaos that had killed the Verini themselves. How long until the storm hits? She asked. Kaido's face was pale. 90 minutes. Maybe 2 hours. And how long to transfer the archive? 3 hours, Marcus repeated. I can't move faster without risking data corruption. The math was simple and brutal. They couldn't save everything. They had to choose. Prioritize, Isla ordered. What's absolutely critical to preserve the species? Marcus pulled up inventory lists. The genetic diversity database, that's essential. Without it, any resurrection would be inbred and non-viable. That's about 40% of the total archive. Then the cultural database, languages, art, history. Another 30%. The rest is redundant copies and supplementary data. Transfer the genetic database first, Isla decided. Then as much of the cultural data as time allows. Everything else. She swallowed hard. Everything else we lose. It was a terrible choice. They were condemning vast portions of Verini knowledge to oblivion. But some hope was better than none. Marcus began the transfer process. Isla watched ancient data flow through modern containers, one species' legacy being saved by another species that had nearly destroyed itself in similar fashion. Isla, Kaido called from where he was monitoring external conditions. Come see this. She joined him at a terminal displaying outside cameras. What she saw made her breath catch. The storm was magnificent and terrible. Lightning didn't just arc between clouds, it crawled across the sky like living things, branching and merging in patterns that seemed almost purposeful. The clouds themselves had formed a massive spiral, a hurricane of toxic atmosphere spinning around the biodome. "It's beautiful," Isla whispered. "It's death," Kaido corrected. "And it's coming right for us." As they watched, a lightning bolt struck a structure a few kilometers away. The flash was so bright it overwhelmed the cameras. When vision returned, the structure was gone, vaporized. "That's what's going to hit us," Kaido said. "In about 75 minutes. Isla's mind raced through scenarios. Their ship was only a kilometer away, but that might as well be on another planet. They couldn't survive outside in the storm. They couldn't wait it out, the biodome would collapse. They were trapped with a timer counting down to annihilation. Unless... "The maintenance drones," Isla said suddenly. "The ones we saw earlier. They were still functioning." "So?" Kaido didn't follow her logic. "So they've survived for 2 centuries in this environment?" "Oh. What's protecting them?" Understanding dawned on Marcus's face. "The maintenance tunnels. They must have some kind of shielding or the drones would have been fried long ago." "Can we use those tunnels to reach the ship?" Isla asked. Kaido pulled up infrastructure maps. "Maybe. There's a maintenance network that runs under the entire facility. Some tunnels extend beyond the biodome perimeter. If we could reach one that goes far enough." "How far do we need?" Isla asked. Marcus checked the storm's projected range. "At least 2 kilometers. Outside the main electromagnetic discharge zone." Kaido traced tunnel paths on his map. "There. Tunnel 7 Beta. It was used for coolant line maintenance. Runs 2.3 kilometers northeast before terminating at a pump station. That's," he calculated, "about 600 meters from our ship's landing site." 600 meters through an electrical apocalypse," Marcus said. "Doable. Barely." "Then that's our plan," Isla decided. "Marcus, how much longer on the transfer?" "Genetic database is 80% complete. I can finish that in 20 minutes. Cultural database will take another hour." "How much of the cultural database can you get in 45 minutes? Marcus calculated. "Maybe 60%. We'd lose a lot of art, literature, personal histories. But the species could be resurrected," Isla confirmed. "Biologically, yes. But they'd have lost so much of what made them Verini." Isla looked at the crystalline storage units, each one a fragment of a dead civilization's soul. They'd come here to save the Verini, but they could only save pieces. The storms and the ticking clock forced impossible choices. "Save what we can," Isla said. "Sometimes that's all anyone can do." They worked with desperate efficiency. Marcus transferred data while Kaido mapped their escape route and Isla gathered supplies. The biodome shuddered around them as the storm grew closer, lightning strikes hitting with increasing frequency. 45 minutes later, Marcus sealed the last container. "That's it. We have the genetic diversity database complete and about 70% of the cultural archive. It's not everything, but it's enough." "Then we move," Isla ordered. They loaded the archive containers onto a maintenance cart, designed for moving equipment through the tunnels. It would be cramped, but it was their best option for transporting everything quickly. The entrance to Tunnel 7 Beta was in the biodome's lower levels, past the fallen cyborg Verini. Isla felt their dead eyes watching as the team hurried past, containers loaded with the very thing these guardians had died protecting. "Thank you," she whispered to the fallen. "We'll make sure they're remembered." The tunnel was exactly as cramped and uncomfortable as expected. Designed for drone access, not humans, it forced them into a crouch. The cart barely fit, grinding against walls as they pushed it forward. "Storm hits in 30 minutes, Kaido reported. "We need to move faster." They moved as fast as the tunnel allowed, which wasn't nearly fast enough. Behind them, the biodome structure groaned. The collapse had begun. "Keep moving," Isla ordered as dust rained from the tunnel ceiling. "We're committed now." The tunnel seemed endless. Every meter felt like a kilometer. The cart caught on debris. Their suits scraped against walls. And always the clock ticked down. 20 minutes. 15 minutes. 10 minutes. "I see the exit," Marcus shouted from the front. "But it's sealed. Emergency bulkhead must have come down during the collapse." They reached the blockage, a heavy metal door designed to contain disasters. And disasters they had in abundance. "Can you cut through it?" Kaido asked. Isla pulled out her plasma cutter. "I can try. But these things are designed to withstand pretty much everything." She started cutting. The plasma torch blazed white-hot, but the door was thick. Too thick. 5 minutes, Kaido said quietly. Isla cut faster, pushing her equipment to its limits. The plasma cutter was overheating, its safety system screaming warnings. For minutes. The storm was overhead now. They could feel it through the rock, electromagnetic energy building like pressure before an explosion. 3 minutes. Isla's cutter broke through. A small hole barely large enough for a person to squeeze through. Not nearly enough for the cart. "We'll have to carry the containers," she said. "One at a time. Move." They began passing containers through the hole. 1, 2, 3. The genetic database first, then the cultural archives. Kaito and Marcus on the other side, Isla feeding containers through. 2 minutes. The tunnel behind Isla began collapsing. Rock and metal falling, the biodome's death throes reaching even here. 1 minute. The last container passed through. Isla dove after it, squeezing through the hole as the tunnel behind her imploded. She emerged into the pump station just as the storm hit. The world became light and sound and fury. Lightning struck the ground around them with the force of artillery strikes. The electromagnetic pulse was a physical force, trying to tear electronics from their very suits. "Run!" Isla screamed, though she couldn't hear her own voice over the storm's roar. They ran through hell, carrying containers of dead dreams through a storm that wanted to kill them. 600 meters became an eternity. Lightning struck so close Isla could feel the static electricity raising her hair beneath her helmet. The ground shook with impacts. The air itself seemed to be on fire. Marcus went down, struck by a piece of debris. Kaito hauled him up and they kept moving. 500 meters. 400 meters. 300 meters. Their suits were failing. Isla's heads-up display flickered and died. Kaito's oxygen regulator was offline. Marcus's leg servo had locked up, forcing him to drag one leg. 200 meters. The ship emerged from the toxic haze ahead. Its airlock standing open, Thorgrim's massive stone form silhouetted in the entrance. 100 meters. Lightning struck 20 meters ahead. The shockwave knocked them down. Isla felt her suit breach, toxic atmosphere flooding in. She held her breath, knowing she had seconds before unconsciousness. 50 meters. Hands grabbed her, Thorgrim's massive grip hauling her forward. Her vision tunneled. The last thing she saw was the ship's airlock closing, sealing them away from the screaming dark. Then darkness, but not the storm's darkness. The gentle darkness of unconsciousness and safety. When Isla woke, they were in orbit. Her suit was in repair mode, healing the breaches. Kaito was beside her, bruised but alive. Marcus was in medical suspension, his leg being treated for the damage from his fall. And beside her, in sealed containers, glowing softly with preserved energy, was the Varini archive. Every genetic code. 70% of their cultural legacy. Not everything, but enough. Enough to remember. Enough to someday, perhaps, resurrect. Thorgrim stood in the doorway, his stone features unreadable. "You succeeded," he rumbled. "Against all logic and probability, you succeeded. How's Marcus?" Isla asked, her throat raw from toxic gas exposure. "He'll recover. As will you both. You were fortunate." "Fortunate?" Isla laughed, and it hurt. "We nearly died. We lost 30% of the archive. The Varini Guardians sacrificed themselves. This was anything but fortunate." "And yet," Thorgrim said, "you saved more than any council expedition ever recovered. You went into conditions we deemed impossible and emerged with exactly what you went for. That is not fortune. That is will." He approached the archive containers, his massive hand resting gently on their surface. "The council will see this," Thorgrim said quietly. "They will see what human determination can accomplish. And they will have to reconsider everything they thought they knew about your species." Isla closed her eyes, exhaustion finally catching up with her. They'd saved the Varini. But had they saved humanity? That answer would come when they returned to Sanctum Prime. Part 7, The Final Judgment. The return to Sanctum Prime took 3 days. 3 days for Isla's lungs to heal from toxic exposure. 3 days for Marcus to regain full mobility. 3 days for all of them to process what they'd witnessed on that dying world. And 3 days for Thorgrim to file his report with the council. Isla spent those days reviewing footage from their mission. The fallen cyborg Varini, 2 centuries of loyalty ending in peaceful shutdown. The storm that should have killed them. The desperate run through hell carrying the genetic legacy of an extinct species. On the 3rd day, Marcus found her in the observation deck, staring at the stars. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Haven't been able to since we left Kepler 442b, Isla admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see those Varini Guardians. They waited 200 years for someone to come home." "We gave them peace," Marcus said, sitting beside her. That's worth something. Is it? We lied to them. Made them think their species had returned. They died believing a fiction. They died believing they'd succeeded, Marcus corrected gently. After 2 centuries of suffering, they finally got to rest knowing their duty was done. I can't think of a better death than that. Isla nodded slowly. Thorgrim says the council is impressed. But impressed doesn't mean acceptance. No, Marcus agreed. But it's a start. Kaido entered the observation deck holding a data tablet. You both need to see this. I've been analyzing the cultural data we recovered from the Varini archive. There's something relevant. He pulled up translated documents. The Varini kept detailed records of their decline. And they wrote extensively about their mistakes. Which were? Isla asked. Moving too fast without understanding consequences. Exploiting resources without consideration for sustainability. Expanding without wisdom. Kaido looked at them both. Sound familiar? The Council's exact charges against humanity, Marcus said quietly. Yes. But here's the thing. The Varini also wrote about what they wished they'd done differently. They wished they'd had mentors. Species who could have guided them, taught them, helped them avoid the mistakes that killed their world. Isla saw where he was going. They wished they'd had a council. Exactly. And they wrote extensively about how if they'd been less prideful, less convinced they could do everything alone, they might have survived. Kaido's eyes were bright. This isn't just an archive of a dead species. It's a cautionary tale. And maybe it's also our best argument. When they finally docked at Sanctum Prime, the atmosphere was different. Word of their success had spread. As they disembarked, carrying the Varini archive, beings from a dozen species stopped to watch. Some looked curious. Some looked skeptical. But all of them looked. Thessar was waiting at the terminal, his crystalline form chiming with what might have been respect. The council convenes in 1 hour. High Arbiter Velzanis requests you bring the archive to the chamber. Requests, not demands? Isla noted. There has been discussion among council members. Your success has raised questions. Some believe it proves your point. Others believe it proves your recklessness. The debate has been intense. In other words, Isla thought, we've split the council. Good. That meant they had a chance. The council chamber felt different this time. The atmosphere less hostile, more uncertain. Humans had done the impossible, and impossibilities made people, all people regardless of species, reconsider their assumptions. High Arbiter Velzanis spoke without preamble. Commander Vance. Dr. Webb. Liaison Reeves. You have completed the trial. You descended to Kepler 442b, a world we deemed too dangerous for recovery operations. You faced conditions that killed 3 council expeditions. And you returned with the Varini archive intact. She paused, her crystalline form glowing with inner light. Thorgrim has provided a detailed report. The council has reviewed it thoroughly. We have questions. We're ready, Isla said. An Arctelian named Crystallis swirled forward, her gaseous form pulsing. You lost 30% of the archive. You could have waited for safer conditions. You could have taken more time. Why did you not prioritize complete recovery? Because complete recovery was impossible, Marcus answered. The storm was coming. The biodome was collapsing. We had to choose between saving something or losing everything. We chose to save what we could. Triage, Kaido added. A very human concept. When you can't save everyone, you save who you can. When you can't preserve everything, you preserve what matters most. A Valkyrie Council member named Praxis chimed with frustration. But this exemplifies our concerns. You make desperate choices under pressure. You accept losses rather than waiting for optimal solutions. This is chaos, not wisdom. Sometimes, Isla said carefully, chaos is the only option. The universe doesn't always give us optimal conditions. Sometimes it gives us impossible situations and limited time and forces us to act or accept failure. Which is why species like the Varini go extinct, Praxis countered. They acted without wisdom. They chose speed over caution. They died because of it. With respect, Kaido said, activating a holographic display, that's not entirely accurate. May I present evidence from the Varini archive itself? He pulled up the cultural documents he'd found. Varini text flowed through the air, translated into every council language. These are the Varini's own records of their decline, Kaido explained. They understood they were dying. They analyzed their mistakes extensively. And they wrote about what might have saved them. He highlighted specific passages. Here, a Varini historian writes, "We expanded without guidance. We believed our success meant we needed no mentors. We saw wisdom as weakness and caution as cowardice. If we had sought help from the elder species of the galaxy, if we had humbled ourselves to learn from those who came before, perhaps our world would still bloom. The chamber was silent. And here, Kaido continued, a Varini scientist writes, our speed was not our enemy. Our refusal to combine that speed with others' wisdom, that was our true mistake. We could have been both ambitious and thoughtful, both rapid and responsible. We chose to be only one. We died for that choice. Marcus stepped forward. The Varini didn't die because they moved fast. They died because they moved fast and alone. They refused help. They rejected guidance. They convinced themselves they didn't need anyone else. We're not making that mistake, Isla said, looking around the chamber at species ancient beyond human comprehension. We came to you. We're asking for membership not because we think we've achieved perfection, but because we know we haven't. We want to learn from your wisdom. We want your guidance. We just don't want to stop moving forward while we're learning. High Arbiter Velzanis was quiet for a long moment. You speak well. But words are still just words. You retrieved the Varini archive. What do you intend to do with it? We intend to give it to you, Isla said, and she heard Kaido's sharp intake of breath. This wasn't part of their planned argument. But as she said it, Isla knew it was right. The Varini archive belongs to the galaxy, not to humanity. We didn't save it to claim it. We saved it because it deserved to be saved. Because every species, even one that failed, deserves to be remembered. Isla gestured to the containers. You have the resources to properly store this. You have the wisdom to decide when and how the Varini might be resurrected. We're just the ones who carried it out of the fire. Thorgrim rumbled with what might have been approval. They refused to claim credit for their achievement. This is unexpected. It's human, Marcus said with a slight smile. We do impressive things, then give away the rewards because it feels like the right thing to do. Our history is full of it. We're terrible at being appropriately self-interested. A Zephyrian named Luminar pulsed with light. I confess I am confused. You risked your lives for this archive. You nearly died retrieving it. And now you simply give it away. Because that's not why we went, Isla said. We didn't go to Kepler 442b to gain something for humanity. We went because the Varini deserved to be saved. The value isn't in possessing their legacy. The value is in the legacy existing at all. This is the human perspective we struggle to understand, Velzanis said. You take enormous risks for reasons that seem emotional rather than logical. Maybe, Isla agreed. But emotions aren't weaknesses. They're what make actions matter. Logic can calculate optimal outcomes. Emotion makes us care about which outcomes we choose. Kaido pulled up another document. There's one more thing from the Varini archive. It's labeled, Final Message to the Galaxy. It was written by the last surviving Varini scholar before she died. With your permission, I'd like to read it. Velzanis gestured assent. Kaido read, his voice carrying through the chamber, to whoever finds this, we failed. But perhaps in our failure we can offer wisdom we lacked in life. We thought ourselves sufficient. We thought our ambition was enough. We thought asking for help was admission of weakness. We were wrong. The galaxy is vast and ancient and full of species who learned lessons we never imagined. If we had joined them, if we had accepted their wisdom while maintaining our drive, we might have thrived. So this is our final gift, the knowledge that no species is complete alone. That wisdom must be balanced with will, that caution must be balanced with courage, that the ancient and young each have value the other lacks. Do not let pride kill you as it killed us. Do not let fear stop you as it never stopped us. Find the balance. Thrive where we failed. And remember us not as a warning, but as a species that tried and loved and dreamed, even as our world died. Kaido's voice cracked on the final words. Silence filled the chamber, profound, contemplative silence. Finally, High Arbiter Velzanis spoke. The Varini's final message speaks to both our concerns and yours, Commander Vance. They advocate balance. The question is whether humans can achieve it. We can learn, Isla said. That's all we're asking for, the chance to learn. Don't judge us against your 10,000 years of stability. Judge us against our willingness to grow, to adapt, to become better than we are. A new voice entered the discussion, an ancient being Isla hadn't heard speak before. It was a crystalline elder, a species so old they'd been founding council members. Its voice resonated like wind through caves. I have witnessed many species join this council over the millennia. Most came when they had already achieved stability, when they had nothing left to prove. Humans come different. You come still growing, still changing, still struggling with your own nature. Is that not a reason to deny them? Praxis asked. Perhaps, the crystalline elder replied. Or perhaps it is exactly what this council needs. We have become so stable we have forgotten how to change. So safe we have forgotten how to risk. So wise we have forgotten how to dream. The elder's crystalline form seemed to brighten. The Varini's final message speaks truth. No species is complete alone. We offer wisdom. Humans offer will. Perhaps together, we can achieve what neither could alone. You would support their membership? Velzanis asked, and Isla heard surprise in her tones. I would support partnership, the elder corrected. Not full membership, not yet. But a new status. Provisional members. Give them access to our knowledge but with oversight. Let them teach us their adaptability while we teach them our caution. A test, but one that recognizes their value even as it addresses our concerns. Debate erupted. Council members conferred, argued, consulted. Isla watched political maneuvering on a scale that spanned species and philosophies. Hours passed. The humans waited, knowing their fate was being decided by beings who thought in centuries rather than years. Finally, High Arbiter Velzanis called for order. The council has debated. We have considered the evidence, the testimony, and the Varini archives lessons. We have reached a decision. Isla felt Marcus grip her hand. Felt Kaido standing straight beside her. This was it. The charges against humanity stand, Velzanis said, and Isla's heart sank. You have expanded too rapidly. You have acted without sufficient caution. You have prioritized individual will over collective wisdom. These facts are not disputed. However, Velzanis continued and hope rekindled, we acknowledge that these same traits enabled you to achieve what we could not. You saved the Varini archive through determination that borders on recklessness. You risked yourselves for beings you never met. You succeeded where our caution led to failure. Therefore, the Council offers humanity a new status, provisional partnership. You will have access to Council knowledge, technology, and diplomatic resources. But you will also accept Council oversight on your expansion, Council guidance on resource management, and Council involvement in your major decisions. Velzanis's tones grew formal. This is not the full membership you sought. It is also not the quarantine we considered. It is a middle path, one that acknowledges both your value and your volatility. A path that allows us to learn from each other. Isla looked at Marcus and Kaido. This was less than they'd hoped for, but infinitely more than they'd feared. We accept, Isla said. On behalf of humanity, we accept provisional partnership with the Convergence Council. Then let it be recorded, Velzanis declared. From this day forward, humanity joins the galactic community not as observers, but as partners in shaping the future. The chamber erupted, not in celebration but in acknowledgement. This was a historic moment even if it was also a compromise. As the formal proceedings concluded, Thorgrim approached them. You surprised us, humans? You continue to surprise us. I suspect you always will. Is that a compliment? Kaido asked. It is an observation, Thorgrim replied. And perhaps a warning. The council has given you a chance. Do not squander it. We won't, Isla promised. We'll prove we can be both ambitious and responsible. Fast and wise. Human and galactic citizens. As they left the council chamber, carrying the news that would change humanity's future, Isla looked back one last time at the massive dome where 8 billion lives worth of dreams and fears had been judged. They hadn't won everything. But they'd won something. They'd won the chance to prove themselves. The chance to learn. The chance to grow. And for a species that had survived ice ages and plagues and world wars and its own worst impulses, a chance was all they needed. The message Isla sent to Earth was simple. We stood before the Council of Stars. We proved that human will burns brighter than fear, stronger than doubt. We're not full members yet. But we're partners now. We have a seat at the table where the galaxy's future is decided. Tell everyone, we're not alone anymore. We're not observers watching from the sidelines. We're participants in something greater than ourselves. The stars are no longer distant lights. They're destinations. They're homes. They're possibilities. And humanity, with all our chaos and passion and stubborn refusal to quit, has earned the right to reach for them. The journey's just beginning. And it's going to be extraordinary. Back on Earth, in cities and villages, on space stations and lunar colonies, 8 billion people received the news. Some celebrated. Some worried. Some simply looked up at the night sky and saw it differently, not as an impossible distance, but as a neighborhood they were finally invited to join. In Lagos, a restaurant owner named Vance looked up from his kitchen and smiled, knowing his sister had done the impossible. In a university dormitory, a young woman named Elena Vance read her mother's message and cried with pride and joy. And across Earth, in 1,000 languages and 1,000,000 voices, humanity spoke the same truth. We are small. We are young. We are flawed. But we are also stubborn and brave and determined. We fell from the trees and stood upright. We survived the ice and tamed the fire. We split the atom and touched the moon. We died by the billions and rebuilt by the trillions of small acts of courage. And now, finally, we reach for the stars, not as conquerors but as partners. Not as children demanding attention, but as adults ready to take responsibility. The Council has wisdom. But we have will. Together we'll build something neither could build alone. The galaxy is vast. The challenges are enormous. The dangers are real. But humanity has never been good at accepting limitations. And we're not about to start now. The story of humanity among the stars had only just begun. But it began with 3 people standing before an alien council, proving that Earth's will was stronger than stars alone could ever be. And that will, stubborn, passionate, impossibly human, would carry them forward into a future bright with possibility.